Welcome to another deep dive. We are incredibly glad you could join us today.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
If you are listening to this, you're probably trying to make sense of you know, the constant headlines, the alerts flashing on your phone, and just the sheer volume of information coming out of the Middle East right now.
It is a lot to process.
It really is. Today is March 9th, 2026, and we are looking at a geopolitical situation that is moving at a completely breakneck pace. Our foundation for this discussion today is a highly detailed, compiled briefing report. It was published on the Patreon page of KULTO, and the title of the briefing is Israel Says It Needs 3 More Weeks to Destroy Iran's Military.
And I have to say, reading through it, it reads like a dense, intense intelligence briefing. It pulls together threads from major news outlets, public statements from military commanders, and these background whispers from anonymous officials to give us a real-time snapshot of where things stand on the ground.
Right. And our mission today is to take that snapshot and help you make sense of it. We are going to unpack the timeline of this joint U.S.-Israeli military campaign in Iran. We'll look at the tactical realities, what's actually happening versus what was planned on paper.
Which is always a huge gap.
Exactly. And crucially, we are going to examine the growing friction between two highly aligned, powerful allies. But before we get into any of that, we do need to pause for a second and talk directly to you about the nature of what we're covering.
Yeah, this is a really vital caveat. The source material we're working with today contains some heavily politically charged content. I mean, we were talking about active international conflict, warfare, military strategy.
Highly polarizing political figures.
Right, all of that. So we need to be crystal clear with you. We're absolutely not taking any sides here.
Done it all.
We are not endorsing any of the viewpoints, the military actions, or the political figures mentioned in this material.
Our sole job today, really, our only goal is to impartially convey and unpack the facts, the quotes, and the ideas exactly as they are presented in the provided sources. We want to give you the information so that you can be well-informed and draw your own conclusions.
Because the real value of this discussion is in understanding the mechanics of what is being reported, the strategies being deployed, and the broader implications of those strategies, purely based on the text we have right in front of us.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's set the scene. Today is March 9th. The material notes we are exactly 10 days into this joint U.S.-Israeli military campaign against Iran. It kicked off back on February 28th, 2026, and the initial wave was, it was nothing short of massive.
Massive is almost an understatement.
Right. We are talking about strikes hitting hundreds of targets across 26 of Iran's 31 provinces. Just visualizing that map, that is nearly the entire country experiencing simultaneous coordinated strikes.
The scale of that first wave is truly staggering. 26 out of 31 provinces means almost nowhere was untouched by this initial operation. And they didn't just hit infrastructure.
Right.
The compilation explicitly states these initial attacks killed Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, along with dozens of senior military commanders. That is a massive decapitation strike right out of the gate, designed to entirely shatter the command and control structure of the country.
Which brings us to this really major contradiction in the reporting. Despite that massive initial wave, a senior Israeli defense official spoke to NPR today on the condition of anonymity and stated that Israel needs approximately 3 more weeks to fully decimate Iran's army, navy, and military industries.
Yeah.
But hold on, if you literally eliminate the supreme leader in week 1 and strike 26 provinces, how does the military not just instantly paralyze? Why do they need 3 more weeks?
Well, you'd naturally assume a system collapses when you remove the head. But the reality of Iran's military and political structure, it's much more decentralized than a standard top-down hierarchy. Organizations like the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, they are specifically designed to operate autonomously in the event of severed communications or decapitation strikes like this. Their regional commanders have the authority and the operational capacity to continue fighting, even if Tehran entirely goes dark.
That makes the timeline gap incredibly revealing. It highlights the friction between the expectation of a military campaign and the gritty reality on the ground. The brief actually includes an admission from an Israeli deputy national security advisor who openly stated the expectation during that first week was that Iran's system of government would begin to, quote, disintegrate sooner, more rapidly than it actually has.
Right, because state structures, even when they're severely damaged at the top, often have this stubborn resilience built into them. The bureaucracy, the regional militias, the sheer inertia of a national military apparatus, it doesn't just shatter like glass.
It bends before it breaks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Military planners are now looking at the calendar, realizing the original estimates were overly optimistic, and asking for an extension to physically grind down those military industries, the Army and the Navy, rather than just waiting around for a systemic collapse.
And because that rapid disintegration didn't happen, the military strategy is visibly shifting into distinct phases. It almost feels like a multi-stage rocket where the massive booster stage does all the heavy lifting to break through the atmosphere, and then it falls away so the second stage can do the precision work. Is that a fair way to look at it?
That is actually a highly accurate way to visualize the tactical pivot.
Yeah.
The first stage of any campaign like this is all about sheer force and clearing the path. According to the IDF Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Ayal Zamir, that first stage is done.
Right, on March 5th.
Yeah, March 5th. He announced that the initial surprise phase of the campaign was complete. This was the phase dedicated to establishing air superiority and suppressing Iran's ballistic missile capabilities.
They had to clear the skies and stop the immediate counterattacks so their jets could operate freely.
Spot on. Now that the booster rocket has fallen away, Zamir says the next stage is escalating attacks against, quote, the pillars of the regime and its military capabilities.
Okay.
And we have to look at what pillars of the regime actually means in practical, operational terms.
Because it's a very broad phrase.
It is. But reports from Reuters and the Critical Threats Project detail that with the skies cleared, they are now going after deeply buried underground missile facilities.
But hitting a factory on the surface is completely different than cracking open a bunker under a mountain. I mean, you can't just drop standard explosives on a mountain and expect to destroy what's inside.
No, you absolutely cannot. You need specialized, deep penetration munitions, commonly known as bunker busters. These weapons rely on massive kinetic energy and a delayed fuse to punch through dozens of feet of solid rock or reinforced concrete before detonating. And the Critical Threats Project confirmed the explicit targeting of Iran's defense industrial base, specifically highlighting missile production facilities near Tehran. They aren't just trying to destroy the weapons Iran currently has sitting on launch pads.
They're going after the source.
Exactly. They are systematically trying to destroy Iran's capacity to build new ones. They're going after the assembly lines and the industrial heart of the military.
So phase 1 was about stopping Iran from shooting back immediately, and phase 2 is about ensuring they can never rebuild their arsenal. It's a systematic dismantling. But systematically cracking open mountain bunkers and destroying industrial hubs takes time.
It takes a lot of time.
And time is exactly what seems to be running out because the political realities are starting to crash into the military realities. Here's where it gets really interesting. The growing tension between the United States and Israel.
Oh, absolutely. This is often the most fragile part of any coalition operation. The military objectives might be perfectly aligned on day one, but the political tolerances of the nations involved are often vastly different.
And we saw a massive flashpoint for this over the weekend. The text details that Israel attacked Iranian oil facilities. And this wasn't a small surgical strike. The description paints a picture of the skies over Tehran literally darkening from the smoke of burning oil.
Yeah, quite a visual.
While this was a heavy tactical hit on Iran's economy, it drew sharp criticism from Washington. NPR reported that U.S. officials were, quote, not satisfied with the scale of that damage.
The U.S. isn't necessarily objecting to the campaign itself, but to the scope of the collateral and economic damage. The source material brings in a highly relevant perspective from Senator Lindsey Graham.
Right.
The brief notes Graham is a close ally of Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, so his words carry specific weight here.
Right.
Graham publicly urged Israel to be careful with its targets because Iran's oil economy will be absolutely necessary to rebuild the country after any potential regime collapse.
That is such a complex paradox to wrap your head around. You are trying to destroy a regime to win a war, but you are simultaneously trying to preserve the country's main source of income so that whoever takes over isn't inheriting a completely bankrupt, failed state. It is essentially the you break it, you buy it rule of geopolitics.
That's exactly what it is. If you completely obliterate the oil infrastructure, you are guaranteeing a humanitarian and economic catastrophe that will last for decades, regardless of who's in power.
Right.
The U.S. seems to be looking at the day after the war, prioritizing regional stability and avoiding a massive power vacuum that could breed further extremism. Israel's current tactical focus, however, is on crippling an existential threat today.
And that differing end goal is the crux of the friction. Israel's geographic proximity makes this an existential war for them. They want total destruction of the threat. The U.S. is thousands of miles away and is prioritizing a quick win without destabilizing the entire region's economy. And that fundamental difference brings us to the ultimate friction point, the timeline.
The ticking clock. President Trump had publicly declared a 4-week time frame for this entire campaign. 4 weeks total.
But we are 10 days in, and Israeli officials are telling NPR they need at least 3 more weeks just for their current objectives. The math simply doesn't add up.
It really doesn't.
The Los Angeles Times is reporting that both U.S. and Israeli officials are privately expressing severe doubts about that 4-week timeline, warning that a multi-month campaign could actually be required to achieve the stated military goals.
What's fascinating here is the sheer vulnerability of the military operation to political wins. The brief quotes that anonymous senior Israeli defense official making a stark admission. They acknowledged that President Trump, quote, could simply end the war at any time.
Wow.
That is a stunning thing for a military planner to admit on the record. It underscores a massive potential rift.
You have generals planning a multi-month methodical dismantling of a nation's military-industrial complex, dropping bunker busters on mountains, but they know the political leader of their primary ally might just pull the plug if he decides the 4 weeks are up.
Yeah.
It is like trying to defuse a complex bomb, but someone else is holding the timer, and they might just walk away with it.
The brief references an analysis by the Brookings Institution that specifically highlights this risk. They note it's an open question whether Trump will have the patience for a prolonged, multi-month campaign. Brookings warns that the current harmony between the U.S. and Israel could completely fracture because of these divergent ambitions.
Because their ultimate priorities are clashing.
Exactly. Israel wants total military destruction of Iran's capabilities, no matter how long it takes. The U.S. administration might just want that quick, decisive political win and a clean exit.
Which forces us to step back and look at the fundamental assumption underlying this entire operation. The host country, Israel, is seeking regime change. They want the current government in Tehran gone. But history gives us a very harsh reality check when it comes to that specific goal. Does bombing a country from the air actually cause the government to fall? Can you achieve regime change just by dropping munitions?
The material includes a quote that listeners really need to sit with. Brigadier General Aaron Ortal, who is retired, told the media line, quote, "There is no precedent for regime change through an air campaign," end quote.
No precedent.
None. Think about the historical limitations of air power. Look at the strategic bombing of Germany in World War II, or the NATO air campaign in Kosovo in 1999. Air campaigns can severely degrade a military's capacity, they can destroy infrastructure, and they can force a diplomatic settlement. But historically, they do not magically cause a deeply entrenched government to vaporize from within.
So if you don't have troops on the ground and you're relying entirely on jets and missiles, you might just be backing a dangerous regime into a corner without actually finishing them off. And the reporting shows that Iran is absolutely digging in. They aren't collapsing. They are doubling down on their stance.
The assassination of Ali Khamenei was supposed to be the catalyst for that rapid disintegration the planners hoped for. Instead, the system reacted by immediately appointing his son, Mojtaba Khamenei, as the new supreme leader.
Right.
And the detail provided about him is alarming. He is widely considered even more radical than his father.
By taking out the head of the state, the air campaign inadvertently elevated someone who is even more hardline and even more determined to fight. Tehran is signaling that they are resolute.
And they are proving that resolve through direct, escalating action. They are not absorbing these strikes passively. Over the weekend, while the U.S. and Israel were arguing over the smoke darkening the skies above Tehran's oil facilities, Iran escalated the conflict significantly outward.
The counterstrikes detailed here are terrifying. Iran fired a cluster bomb warhead that actually struck an apartment building in Tel Aviv. They hit a civilian center.
Yeah.
But they didn't stop at Israel's borders. They also launched major attacks on oil facilities in the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see the precise geopolitical game theory Iran is employing. This is no longer a localized conflict between Israel and Iran. By striking Emirati and Saudi oil facilities, Iran is actively threatening the global economy.
They're expanding the board.
Exactly. They are sending a very clear message to the world. If our oil burns, your oil burns.
And the economic implications of that are massive. If Saudi and Emirati oil infrastructure goes offline, global energy markets panic. Gas prices spike worldwide. That specific economic pressure translates directly into political pressure on Washington. Iran is intentionally widening the war to force the international community to lean on the U.S., who will then lean on Israel to stop the campaign.
It is a deliberate strategy of regional spillover. They are raising the cost of this war for the entire planet. When you have cluster bombs hitting Tel Aviv apartments and critical oil facilities burning across the Gulf threatening global supply chains, the pressure on the U.S. administration to call an end to the operation, regardless of whether the military objectives are met, it grows exponentially.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring all these complex threads together for you. You are witnessing a massive, historic military operation that is colliding violently with reality. The architects of this campaign hoped for a rapid collapse, a quick disintegration of the Iranian regime after a decapitation strike.
But that didn't happen.
Right. Instead, the decentralized nature of their military held firm. 10 days in, the operation is moving much slower than planned. Military planners are asking for more time, at least 3 more weeks, maybe months, to systematically crack open underground bunkers. But the clock is ticking because powerful allies are fracturing over the timeline and the targets.
The tension is palpable.
You have the U.S. prioritizing regional stability and a post-war economy led by a political leader who might end the war on a whim. Meanwhile, history shows air campaigns alone rarely topple governments. Instead, this one has sparked a more radicalized leadership in Tehran that is retaliating by striking global oil supplies, dragging the entire Middle East and the global economy into the crossfire.
It is a precarious balancing act, with global stability really hanging in the balance. As we conclude our analysis of these sources, I want to leave you with a final lingering question to consider. We know that military history shows air campaigns alone do not topple regimes. We also know that the U.S. might pull the plug on this operation at any moment due to mounting global economic and political pressure. So what happens if the clock runs out before the military objectives are met? Does an incomplete, artificially shortened campaign simply leave a more radicalized, severely damaged regime with absolutely nothing left to lose?
That is a chilling thought, and definitely something to mull over as the situation continues to unfold. We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Your time and your curiosity are what make this show possible. Stay informed, keep asking questions, and we will catch you on the next one.
Thank you for listening. Take care.